Hi, I'm Josh Cadillac, and welcome to my podcast, Know Your Shit. I've been blessed to see great success, as well as seeing the bottom up close and personal in 2008. And if there's one lesson I've learned, is that if you want to have success and differentiate yourself from everyone else out there, you need to know your shit. As a successful real estate and crypto investor and an educator, it drives me insane that people do not immerse themselves in their craft. Everyone is so busy advertising and testing new sales techniques, they forget the most important thing, the product. Here I want to talk to the folks that got this right, the most successful people in the world in every industry. Bring them to you and find out what they learned in their business that made it great. When you listen to my podcast, you will know for sure that the topics and experts we have on have one thing in common. They know their shit. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and I'll be in the driver's seat for today's show as we strive to learn how to stop doing deals and start closing customers for life. Today, we have a great show for you. We have a great guest, Mr. Chris Ruden. Chris, thanks so much for being on, bud.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Of course, man. So let me start off nice and simple. What is it that you do?
So I'm a speaker. I'm a speaker through and through. I get paid to speak for a living. So I don't really sell services from stage. I get paid to go into corporations, associations, and speak for national meetings. I also added speaker coaching and a bunch of other stuff. But at the heart of it, what I do is I'm a speaker.
I love it, man. It's what I do as well. It is a passion. It is amazing stuff. What got you started doing that?
Man, I was born with physical disability. I have a badass prosthetic arm, and my entire life I kind of struggled with body image, and I went through a lot of hard stuff. And I feel like most people go through hard stuff, but for me, I did something with it, and I wanted to help other people see their world without limits. So I made it a challenge for myself. Like, how can I take what I've gone through, my processes, my frameworks to get through some of the hardest things in my life and teach other people to do the same? Because it's one thing to do it yourself, but to teach a repeatable and scalable process to other people or organizations, completely different animal. So I took on that goal 7 years ago, and ever since then, last few years have really scaled up for me, and I've grown it into a massive business where I speak and I get paid nicely to speak on the frameworks that I teach.
Love it, man. Love it. I love what you said there, because more and more as I think about it, it's the hard things that you overcome that define you to you. So like you learn what you've got in the tank when push comes to shove. Whether or not you're the kind of person that when it gets hard, you keep going. Well, if you have a history of proving to yourself that, hey, when it gets hard, I keep plugging away, I find a way, as opposed to when you never have done anything hard, there's always kind of this mystery in your own mind as to, well, if it ever does get hard, like, what am I going to do? Will I still be standing? And I think a lot of people, I think one of the best lines I ever heard was a book I read where the guy said, in everybody's heart, at least it was a book written in men. It said, in every man's heart, he liked to think that he's William Wallace, the guy that's going to be standing there at the end and they're going to be tearing his guts out and he's still not going to give in. But every guy worries in his heart that he's the Bruce, which is the guy that showed up with his troops, saw the other side, and took his troops and went home. And so, yeah, man, I think that there's just so much. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on just how important it is to do hard things.
Man, I think a lot of people haven't experienced enough pain to motivate them to do something, like epic in their life, or something. A lot of people haven't got punched in the face. A lot of people haven't been at the bottom. They've kind of struggled. So they're in this purgatory of, it's not as good as they want it to be, but it's not bad enough to change. So they cruise in the middle, and it's resistance from the top down and the bottom up. And it keeps people in the middle. It keeps people alive, but not thriving. And that's the problem. Is I'm not telling you to go seek pain or discomfort. I'm not going to like be a hustle culture bro and be like, yeah. I'm all about like intentional realism. I'm not a positivity hippie where I'm chanting positive affirmations when the building is on fire. I'm gonna get the fuck out. Like, I'm a realist, but at the end of the day, like,
I love it.
at the end of the day, like, if you get a flat tire, don't fucking set the car on fire. And so many of us do that. Something happens and we just give up we give up more because of the thing that happened than the thing that happened itself. We take one derailment and we derail ourselves more, almost like teaching ourselves a lesson, and it does nothing but hurt us in the long run. And I did that for a long time. I hid my disability for 17 years, man. And for 17 years I created a life around hiding. A life around a shell of a person to try and fit in and try and hide myself. Like, I went to the bottom of the barrel of everything. And it wasn't until I realized, like, hey, man, you got to lean into this stuff. And if you truly want to help people, you have to help yourself first. You know, my big come to Jesus moment was really one line, and it's, you can't fix what you're not willing to face. And a lot of us have that thing we're not willing to face, but we damn sure wish it got fixed. No one's coming to save you, and it has to be you.
Yeah, no, I say it a little bit differently when I think about it, but I think it's what you're talking about. There's a version of me that I like better that has this right, and I'd love to be that guy, but I don't want to do the work that it takes to be that guy. Like I want the way I kid around with it is I say, I would love to have been a Navy SEAL, but there is no part of me that desires any of the work that goes into being that Navy SEAL. Like the
Honestly,
actual,
I respect the honesty though, and a lot of people won't even be honest to say that, because I would love to be at the finish line of a race I'm not willing to run. Of course, everyone would. Everyone would. But you have to know, like, what's the race you're willing to run? What's the work you're willing to do? Like, what are you willing to scrape by for? And that's the thing that should drive you. And if it doesn't, you got to find that thing, because you don't want to bust your ass for the wrong thing, for the thing that doesn't fuel you or the thing that doesn't drive you. And some people kind of misfocus on money, and money is a byproduct of what you do. And you will get a lot of money if you focus on the true solution for other people and helping people thrive. That's where I found my most amount of success, when I stopped chasing the money itself and started chasing solutions for other people. I made sure they were successful, which in turn made me successful and gave me money, the thing I wanted the most in the first place. So misplaced focus really derails a lot of people.
it's very much that old man in the sea thing. You
Yeah.
chase this thing and chase this thing, and you finally get it. And when you finally get it back to shore, it's not nearly as fulfilling as you thought it was going to be. It's this husk of what you thought it was going to be. And so, yeah, no, man, and I love that piece you talk about, because I talk about that too a little bit differently. I love to hear how we're coming to some of the same stuff
Yeah.
from different sides. Is this idea of being miserable with the mediocrity, but not miserable enough to do
Yeah.
anything about it, right? Like I hate it, but not enough to actually do anything about it.
Yeah.
And so I'll just sort of sit here and complain about it. And this is where so many people, that idea of the life of quiet desperation that most people live, they hate where they are, but not enough to actually get off their own ass and do something about it. And so it's figuring out, like you said, and I think this is such an important piece. What is it I've got to work with here? Like, what is this guy good for? What is the thing that this guy could bring to the world that's going to be the best thing to make the world better for him having been here? If I could do that and focus on that, that's probably going to be the thing that's going to give me the most fulfillment. And by the way, the money will probably follow as well.
So it's funny, those people who kind of get stuck. I was fortunate and unfortunate to be one of those people that didn't really have to study for tests, and I still did good. You know, I unfortunately could operate on 75% and do better than a lot of people. The gift of a skill like that, whether you're a salesperson or you're really good at being charismatic or whatever your skill is, that can really screw you because you never give 100% because you feel like you don't have to. So you leave so much in the tank because you're better than some, you'll never be better than yourself or never be better than the others you're competing against because you're kind of cruising. And I did that for a long time, man. You have to decide to maximize your skill intentionally and not just exist. A lot of people are waiting for pain or a kick or a catalyst, and I'm like, why can't you be your own catalyst? So many people are learning sales and overcoming objections and learning all of this behavioral psychology to sell other people, but like, why can't you sell yourself on the shit you've been lying to yourself for years? Why can't you break your own objections? You're stuck. Are you really stuck? Because what is stuck? A lack of clarity and fear. Okay, we can address those two things when you break it down. But if you're just letting that smokescreen objection of I'll never get there stop you and be the objection for the real issue, which is you're what, afraid of feeling stupid? You're afraid of shame? I go so many levels deep with people, and I'll put it this way, and this is kind of my process. I used to be a fitness coach online and built a big business on that before I switched to speaking. And people come to me like, Chris, I want to lose 20 pounds. And I'm like, no, you don't. And they look at me like, what do you mean? I was like, you don't want to lose 20 pounds. How do I know? If you lost 20 pounds and looked the exact same, would you be happy? And they're like, no. I was like, oh, so you want to look like you lost 20 pounds? And they're like, yes. I'm like, that's not true either. And they're like, what the fuck? And I was like, if you looked like you lost 20 pounds, but you looked in the mirror and you still weren't happy, would you be happy? And they're like, no. So I'm like, you're telling me what you truly want is to be happy with what you see in the mirror. And that's a feeling, right? And who's responsible for your feelings? So maybe we had some other work to do. When it comes, it's always a feeling. Whatever we chase is always a feeling, whether it's money, business, health, wealth, relationships, it always comes down to a feeling. And people will say to me, oh, Chris, it's easier said than done. True, but it's better done than said. It's easier to stay in bed, but you get up and go to work. You tell yourself you have to when you don't have to. You could be homeless. Anyone can turn a desire into a necessity just by linguistic programming and believing in the stuff you're actually doing, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying totally, and I mean, I think that the piece that, and maybe it's just how my personal brain damage works as well, but the idea of dying with my magnum opus still in me, dying and never having a chance to see my best work, we all run that risk.
Yeah.
And the thing that stands in the way of us is us, right? And this idea that, where do you grow? Do you grow on the mountaintop? You don't grow on the mountaintop. You grow going through the freaking valley, which means if I give a rat's ass about myself, if I really give a rat's ass about seeing who this guy could be, I can't leave me on the mountaintop. I got to be looking for that next valley to stick my ass in because the version of me that comes out of the other side of that valley, well, I like that guy better than this guy. That guy's really hardcore, right? That guy really gets stuff done. That guy is really, and so it's this figuring out. So much of this is this figuring out how to motivate this person I'm stuck with. Like I got this guy. How the hell do I get this guy doing what he needs to do? And that is really, and for me, it's this CEO staff conversation. That's kind of how I break it down. Of like you're the CEO of your own life. You've got to spend time figuring out how to get out of the staff what you need to get out of them, because you are the HR department for yourself. You got to figure out how to take advantage of yourself. And so it seems like coming at a similar thing. I don't know if that jives with what you talk about, but it sounds to me like it does. And so I want to kind of give you a second to maybe weigh in on that.
Yeah, man. A a good father doesn't have to say he's a father. He just is a father and it's known, you know? Um, you shouldn't have to demand of yourself what you just come to expect, which is, I don't always want to do this shit. I'm not always motivated. And I hate when people ask me that because they'll see me. I did a TV show with The Rock. I did like all this cool stuff. I'm in all these magazines and like social media and all this. You're like, man, you're just so motivated. I'm like, one, all that shit is fake. It's not fake, but it's highlight reel stuff. So understand those are my peak moments. You're not constantly crossing a finish line. That's not how life works. So you see that, just take it with a grain of salt because there's the other stuff, the unsexy stuff that you don't see behind the scenes. Like my video looks great right now, but if you saw the shit show that's going on behind the scenes, you'd be like, damn, everything's about to fall. Like you just got to remember that it's not motivation. Motivation comes after action. So instead of saying like, how do you stay so motivated? The real question is, how do you develop the discipline to do the stuff you need to do even when you don't feel like doing it? And you already do that on a daily basis. You just haven't framed it in the right way because every day that alarm clock goes off and you go to work for someone else, you say, I don't feel like going, but you're like, but I have to anyways. Why is that mindset different? Why is that mindset different than the one you could apply to your own stuff, to your own business, to your own passion, hobby, to your relationship, to any aspect of your life? We can't say, oh, I'm just not motivated because that's motivation. You can't do things solely off feeling like it or emotion. Because if I only did shit when I felt like it, bro, I'd never go to the gym. I would have never competed. I would have never broken records. I would have never done anything in my life. And it's not about me. Take me out of the situation. You will never get to where you want to be if you only do it when you feel like it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, and I think the days that I appreciate most are the ones when I genuinely do not feel like going to the gym and I have every reason in the world not to, and I show up anyway.
Just
Because those
show
are,
up, dude. Like that's
yeah,
it.
it's when I prove to myself, hey, I'm the kind of
That
guy that shows the frick up. It's
yeah.
hard, and because there's this constant proving to yourself who you are. Like, hey, wait a second, when the chips are down, but it's what you're talking about. It very much is. The idea that you show up to work every day means you have this long history of persevering through
Yeah.
stuff you don't want to do anyway. Like, if you look for it, if you look for your history of persevering, it's there, but you got to go put the right set of glasses on and go look for what you're looking to get more of out of yourself, which is, hey, wait a second. I keep showing up to a job I don't want to go to. You know what? I am pretty tough, even when I don't
Yeah.
feel like it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, I think there's that ample evidence that people kind of tend to turn a blind eye to. That's a very good take on it, man. I never thought about it that way.
It's interesting because I find that most people are so close to the wall that they can't see the bigger picture, and a lot of us need to zoom out a little bit. And when you take a step back, you realize like it's not it's not as hard as I'm making it out to be. And I'm such a big proponent of language because people will say things like, "Oh, I'm just lazy. I never get things done." Let's run with that. Uh, I'm lazy. I always ask, is that true? Because what you mean is I've been lazy in the past. But who you have been is not who you have to be right now or moving forward. So you are not lazy. You have been lazy, but it's not who you have to continue to be. So when we use language that solidifies past action on current like pretense, you're already dooming yourself right now moving forward. You're dooming yourself to repeat your past over and over. So instead of saying that, you have language matters, man. And psychology shows internal narrative and internal dialogue dictate feelings, beliefs, and actions in that order. So when you say something like, I'm lazy, you're giving yourself permission to continue to be lazy. And you wonder why you have this self-fulfilling prophecy because your internal narrative has decided who you will be. People are like, oh, it can't be that easy. It's not easy, but it is simple. It's simple. You need to change your language, to change your beliefs, to change your actions, and start moving towards speaking towards the life you want to live.
Yeah. No, the way that I think about it is this: you're there's such a narrow difference between making the good decision and the bad decision. Like it's usually just that last little bit of oomph in the tank that it takes to just get over that hump to make that one better choice. And so all you're talking about is just flipping the switches as much as you can in the favor of making that better choice, of trying to change the momentum so that you're starting to get ahead. So like the people that I deal with, there's one person particularly comes to mind. Their big phrase, I can't. They hit you with the I can't. And I'm like, well, as long as you keep saying that, that's going to be true. I want,
Linguistically, it's a lie, and that's the problem, you know?
I want you to imagine a world where today you can. Today, I haven't, but today I can. Today is going to be different. Today I'm going to exert my will on the universe and I'm going to make today a little different than yesterday. I don't need it to change radically. I just need you to be a little different than you were yesterday and a little bit more like what you want to be. Because that's how winning is done. You win by chipping away. You just break it down a little bit at a time, right? And you start to set this precedent.
If you're in my circle, you understand that honesty is everything. And you language that is lying, like saying I can't, I would ask that person, is that true? And they would say yes. I'm like, understand, feelings are not facts. I believe that you feel like you can't, but I don't believe that you know that you can't because facts are not feelings. You maybe don't want to. Maybe in the past you haven't, so you feel like there's so much momentum in the wrong direction that you're making this a fact. But understand, you have the ability, you just don't have the desire. And if you don't have the desire, we can fix that. If you didn't have the ability, guys, I got 7 fingers. I literally have 7 fingers. I can't count to 10 on my fingers. That's a fact. There's no motivation in the world that's going to change that.
Yep.
Anything else, though? I deadlift 675. Broke a world record with deadlifting. Got on a TV show and did this whole thing with The Rock. Like, no one thought I could do that. The only person that believed in me was me because I was like, I know what I can't do, but I won't lie to myself and tell myself I can't do something that I just have to adapt and do differently. So what's the difference with using that philosophy or mindset with yourself, your business, or your organization, it's the same mindset. So when I teach change management strategies to get unstuck, it starts with linguistics. It starts with questions to really uncover the truth, because we can't fix a problem if we can't see the root of it. I always have to get the root of people's problems
Yeah, got to take and trace it back to the all the way up the flow chart to where the problem
all
began.
the way. And it's uncomfortable and it takes a lot of why. You have to ask why so many times. But I find that regarding your podcast, Know Your Shit, when you ask people why enough, you figure out if they know their shit or not. Because someone will say, oh, this do this cardio, it helps burn fat. I'm like, why? They're like, oh, because it burns calories. And I'm like, oh, why does that cause fat loss? And they're like, um, trust me. And I'm like, ah, okay, okay. So you don't really know your shit. And take a deep dive to learn yourself first before you start learning all this other crazy stuff. Fix the stuff you got going on internally, because then you have a solid foundation to build something ridiculous, something epic. But how can you expect people to communicate with you properly if you can't even communicate with yourself properly?
Yeah, no. If you look, the primary piece of business equipment that we have that we got to go through this life with is the person we see in the mirror.
Yeah.
And we got to take, that's job one, is figuring out how to get out of this what we can, which means we got to figure out what's getting in the way. Like, I mean, it's just a basic assessment of what we have to move forward with. This is the equipment we've got to work with. How do we get out of it all that we can? How do we squeeze out of it what we can? And, you know, to me, and I, especially when I get around my type A's, the folks that have really pushed hard, and they do get a lot out of themselves, but they hold back in certain ways. You know, to me, it's like we've been tuning this car our whole lives to take and really turn out this real hot rod, but we never really take it out to the salt flats and open it up to see what it can do. Like we take it back and forth to the grocery store all day. And it's sitting there, blah blah blah. It's ready to go. It's ready to tear the rubber off the rims, but we never really open it up and see what it can do. We never really take it out there and say, you know what, let's go balls to the wall and just see what let's let it scream and see what it can do. And man, I gotta say, when you look at a life that could be lived that way, man, and when it's not, what a tragedy is that?
Do you know why? Do you know why people don't take it out to the salt flats?
Because they're scared.
They're scared that it'll fail.
Yeah,
They're scared that all the work they've done, they'll be seen as a failure. They're scared of being seen as a failure. Why? Because they're scared of feeling like a failure. Why? Because they're scared of shaming themselves. And if you promise like not to shame yourself and own every win and every loss the same way and not think less of yourself because you put the effort in and it worked or it didn't, that's life. It worked or it didn't. And there's no judgment that comes from that except for the judgment you continue to put on, because other people's opinion of me is not my business or my responsibility. So I'm not worried about what people think of me. But if I'm so worried about what I think of myself, why is there a disconnect between what happens and what I say about myself? So what are you really afraid of to open up in the salt flats? Well, you're afraid of shaming yourself. So don't. Easier said than done, of course, but better done than said. Don't shame yourself. You put in all this work, you test it, it doesn't work. Good, test it again. That's the benefit of doing things over and over and over to find that right thing. But if you expect perfection the first time you open that thing up, that's not life. This isn't a Disney movie?
absolutely. It's sadly we have this tough experience of ourselves where like the best things in life that we get to do, we almost punish ourselves simultaneously while doing. Like it gets to be cheat day and I can have ice cream and all I'm thinking about as I'm eating my ice cream is how much cardio I'm going to have to do to burn off this ice cream. You know what I mean? It's like you earned it and you don't let yourself enjoy it. It's like there are no full wins. You
I
go
hate
on
that,
vacation. Exactly, because
man.
how bad a boss to you are you if you don't you make yourself
Ooh,
work so freaking hard to get stuff, and then when you do get it you can't. Oh my god, we're on vacation, how much is that going to cost, how much is that going to you know
bro, that's constantly moving the goalpost. And when I have a quote in my office behind me. It says, "We often suffer in our imagination more than we do our reality." And that kind of stuff. If you never give yourself permission to enjoy life, I made the biggest change probably 2 years ago where I worked a little less, or at least like less crazy and more intentional. I gave myself more freedom to like enjoy time and uh, take those wins, you know?
Sure.
I gave myself time to enjoy the wins without being so critical. Like I could have the chicken wing, you know? I could take the 30 minutes to watch a Netflix show with my girlfriend, you know? Like when I started incorporating that intentionally, not only did my quality of life like massively go up, my business blew up because everything I did was intentional. And I stopped just focusing on the building business and I started focusing on the building a life.
Yeah.
We forget about that component. If you are constantly redlining it, no, yeah, when you go out to the salt flats, your shit's gonna explode because you have not enjoyed life. Your whole goal in building this business is to have a life that you don't need a vacation from. Yet all you want to do is take a vacation, and even when you take a vacation, you are stressed and you feel guilty. When do you win? When do you win? You post on Instagram that you sold a $20,000 client, $100,000 client. Great, but you haven't been happy for how long? You haven't been content for how long? When's the last time you were proud of yourself, bro? Like that's fucking embarrassing to me that you sell $1 million houses, yet you can't even enjoy a night with your family. No, man, that's not a win to me. That's not a win to me. If your bank account doesn't match your quality of life, I don't care.
You're wrong. No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that very much, and this is where my most recent work is kind of led toward, um, is the idea of where does that answer come from, right? Where where do I figure out? Because we can, and this is the tough thing, right? Like if I was to ask you when you were 10 years old, Chris, if I was to say, hey, Chris, now that you're 10, do you understand yourself better than when you were 8? And you'd be like, oh man, when I was 8, I had no clue, but now that I'm 10,
Yeah,
I got to figure it out. If I asked you the same question when you were 20 about when you were 10, you'd be like, oh yeah, man, when I was 10, no freaking, but now that I'm 20,
yeah,
right? And even you're talking about things that you've learned in the last few years, right? How like you had it wrong before, which means that we can't even really trust ourselves that we've got the best view of things, right? Not like we're all, and for guys like you and me that are really intentionally trying to do this, we're definitely trying to intentionally get the best view of where we are. But there's no guarantee that we don't have the better solution coming, further down the road. So where can we get the information from to figure out what we should be shooting for today? Like, what does the end need to look like? What is a life well lived that I can look back on at the end and say, like my grandfather, he just passed away, guy was 97. He said, I have no regrets. I'm like, man, 97 years on this earth. But he was one of the most generous men that I've ever met. As not a wealthy guy, but always kind. Like even when he was in pain, he was always respectful and kind to people. The nurses in the place where he was living wept when he died because he was such a kind man. What a thing to be able to say, So like that, like just that, take that kindness component. That's got to be part of a life well lived. That people
man.
say,
I think to that point, one of my last mentor for speaking that really helped me like grow my business. He was a mortician. He worked in the funeral space, and he made a crazy amount of money speaking. And I'm like, dude, how? That doesn't sound so weird, you know? He's like, I teach people how to not just leave a legacy, but how to live a legacy. And we always talk about leaving a legacy or building something in the end, but why aren't we living the legacy we want to leave actively? So ask yourself all the components, maybe the three: health, wealth, relationships. On a daily basis, are the relationships you have tended to? If not, you're waiting to tend to them later? That's crazy. Is your health like maintained on a daily, weekly basis? Oh, you're waiting for that to come later. You're going to start taking care of your health later. That's crazy to me. If you're doing one aspect, just the wealth aspect, that's 33%. And I'm not good at math, but I know that's not a good grade. So why are you not living that legacy instead of just wanting to leave it later? We always push things off till the very end. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. You won't. You won't, man, because you don't know. You don't know when your last day is. You don't know when your quality of life will take a turn health wise. I have an autoimmune disease, type 1 diabetes, that came at 19 years old. I didn't expect that. I was fortunate that I was able to use that to my advantage. But you never know, dude. So like, stop waiting and start creating the life on a daily basis. Micro and macro planning, that's all it is setting short-term and long-term goals. On a daily basis, how can you find contentment? On a monthly basis, how can you find contentment in all areas of your life? Contentment doesn't mean pure happiness. And I think people are scared of the word contentment because, like, oh, contentment is complacency. I'm like, no, there's a reason why in the English language those two words are spelled differently. Very different. Find contentment in the little moments in the process of achieving the big moments. That's okay.
I think that the reason why people are that way is they've learned that the way to get themselves to move is by pain, and they're afraid to give themselves enjoyment because they
Oof.
fear that they're going to degenerate back into that less mobile, that less a version of themselves they don't like. So they only know that if I hit the horse with the whip, it runs. So
Yes.
all they learn to do is go to the whip, and they don't learn to use the carrot well. They don't learn. I mean, like maybe if I'm going to be really honest here, as a kid, I was a lazy little kid. And my mother used to sing a lazy song to me and stuff like that about how lazy I was and whatever, right? And I didn't like that guy as I got older. So I learned that the foot had to be squarely in the ass to keep me moving. And there was definitely a period for a lot of my life where I had feared that if I let up at all, I turned back into that guy. And I wasn't sure I could get that guy out of bed in the morning, right? And so I think, and this is kind of the place that I've come to, Chris, is really trying to figure out where that answer comes from as to what that good life is. And the place that I've come to, and I don't know if it's the best solution, but it's the best one I've come to so far, is what do you want them saying about the person they're putting in the ground?
Yeah.
What do you want that obituary? And you got to be careful with obituaries because people love to take and blow sunshine on dead people's asses, right?
All day. All day.
What do you want people to get up there and say about you? What would be the thing that really moves the needle? Because that's going to be informing you what you need to do today to be that guy in that box, right?
Man,
And
you
so
just triggered so many things. The first thing I'll say is this. If they won't say it today, they won't say it at your funeral. If
you got
you
to do the work today to be that guy.
don't, it's like your business, like anything else. Don't close the deal tomorrow. You know what happens when the prospect walks. The prospect is your life now. That's your life. And when you are allowing it to go later, you're not going to close that deal. That obituary is going to read how it does today, 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now. And you said something else. You said the only way people motivate the way people motivate themselves is through pain.
For a lot of us, yeah.
Yeah, and it is the way for a lot of people, but they don't understand that it is only a way of motivation, not the way of motivation. Life has to be multifaceted, and it took me 30 years to figure this out. It has to be multifaceted. It's not just if X then Y conditional philosophy of like if I don't burn the rubber and go all the way to the metal, I won't be successful. I'll fall into bad habits. You're creating this hyper extreme situation of if I don't ruin my life now, I'll never get to that good life later. And like there is space in the middle, and it's not complacency. It's a level of contentment that is okay. I, dude, I'm making more money than I ever made, spending more time than ever with the people matter. How much are you willing to sacrifice of your life now to potentially maybe have a better life later? Because if you're like me, there will always be new opportunities. You close one project, you have five more you want to do. There's no there's no finish line to success. There's no finish line to mental health. There's never an I made it moment. It's the process. The old man in the sea, it's not called the old man with the fish. The sea is the journey. That is the book because without that piece, without that travel, the hardship, the up and down, without the shape of that story, there would be nothing but bones. Tell a better story, man. You have to live the story you want told at your funeral
Sure. No, and I mean it comes from making the daily decisions
daily.
that helps you to respect yourself and know who you are better. No,
Yes.
you've got to respect what you're capable of. I think a lot of us live in fear of what we're capable of, and so we don't want to take and open that door and find out. because then also it removes any of the excuses why you haven't done more as well. Now you actually, when you find out, hey, look, I can actually go this far, well, then the question that immediately follows, well, why haven't you?
So it's funny that you said the why haven't you? I'm writing a new book right now, and it's about change and getting unstuck. And the second chapter is literally titled "Why Haven't You?" That's a hard question, man, because the second you ask someone that, they close up and they get defensive. And what's the real issue that's stopping you? Because until you're willing to face that, you're never going to get through that. You have to have a face to face with yourself, and like a lot of people aren't willing to face that stuff because it's scary. Because then you realize, like, damn, I could have been doing this the whole time. Now we got to manage that shame and guilt again, and we got to give ourselves permission to like not beat ourselves up for what we haven't done because we can't do anything about that. Yeah, it sucks. But from this day forward, it is now your responsibility to do that. And not just responsibility, your response ability, your ability to respond to yourself, to your circumstances, to everything else in life. You have that ability. So you can never say the word I can't from this moment on because you know you have the ability to respond.
Right. No, I mean, it can be better, and the chief thing that's getting in our way is ourselves. And so, what are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to, because the biggest beneficiary of getting this right is you. I mean,
Yeah.
you are stuck with you for the rest of your life. This is what you got to deal with. So, that idea of getting yourself right, man, it's such good stuff. But let me ask you this: where do you think all the success came from for you?
Man, I really just vowed to be the person I never had growing up, and I never thought I would make it this far in life in general, like as a being alive, let alone um, I put my head down and just saw what would come from it. I didn't put that glass ceiling on my potential. I was like, I want to try and do this. I'm gonna do it everything I can, and we'll see where it goes. And as things kind of blossomed, I'm like, man, I never knew that could happen. And I'm like, but if that could happen, maybe this could happen. Maybe I could do this. Maybe this won't stop me. Maybe I can keep going. Like the whole maybe I can keep going. Maybe I can keep going. Man, that drove me. So I think all of that success came from an idea that maybe I don't have to be mediocre. Maybe I don't have to be like, unfortunately, my parents and my family. Maybe I don't have to just be take a safe job. Maybe I can fail and still be okay. I just questions. Questions have really changed my life. They've positioned me to ask better questions, to take a risk, man. Take a risk and know that I can recover from anything. Because think about it. Think about the hardest stuff you've ever faced in your life. The most difficult stuff that you told yourself you'll never get over. You got over it. You got through it and you're here. Nothing has taken you out so far. And if it does, you don't have to pay the light bill tomorrow. So like that's great. You know, at the end of the day, bro, you said it earlier in this call. Um, you have to look for the signs. Like you prove to yourself what you do. And up until this point in your life, you've proven to yourself that regardless how painful, how hard, you found a way through. Even if it wasn't efficient or optimal, you made it through. And you will do that for the rest of your life.
The visual evidence supports I've survived everything that's come my way so far, and I'm still here swinging.
Yep.
So, maybe that means, and this is actually, there's a keynote that I do where I end with that. Maybe the visual evidence supports that you're a lot tougher than you think you are.
Yep.
And so, it's really internalizing that and embracing the fact that, what, exactly what you said. You have taken everything life's thrown at you so far, and guess what? You're still here,
Yep.
right? Yeah. And so that there is something to that. Let me ask you this: what do you see? And this is a very broad question, so I'm gonna leave it to your interpretation. What do you see as the opportunity in the market today?
There are so many ways to go with that. For me, the opportunity is solve other people's problems. There are so many people struggling with finding ways to make money in their specific industry. There's so many people struggling with optimizing whatever system they have, and they're just kind of stuck. They don't know what to do. In the speaking industry, I saw that, so I jumped on it. I started speaker coaching. Anyone who wants to learn how to make $500,000 a year speaking, I'm like, I can help them. I know I can help them do what I do. That's great. I know exactly how to do that. I maybe can't help you make seven figures, but I know how to make half a six, you know? Uh, I start jumping on the opportunities that I see. Like I can help the version of myself 5 years ago. So anyone who was in my position 5 years ago, I know without a doubt, I can hold your hand and walk you to where I am now. And by the time I do that, I will be even farther ahead. I think understanding that what have you accomplished so far, you can teach, you can build, you can create a solution for someone who had the pain you had 5 years ago.
That's good stuff. No, I mean, like isolating that I can fix the problems of that guy if you're there. And I think the thing that really, Chris, strikes home is how old that message really is, because what comes to mind as you were saying that is a version of what Zig Ziglar used to say all the time, which is you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want, right?
Fact.
And and what's great, because my brother was a big Zig, used to listen to Zig Ziglar and used to drive me crazy because like I don't want to listen to that stuff, right? And of all the things that I heard him say, that is the one that has always stuck with me. Figure out what other people need, figure out how to get it to them better than they get it someplace else, and that's how you get what you want. And that's what's
That's
made
real.
capitalism.
That's real entrepreneurship. That's the unsexy side of entrepreneurship. It's the non-social media side of entrepreneurship. Real business is solving other people's problems. And when you put that first, I just saw a quick clip of Simon Sinek. He was like, the point of a car is not to buy gas, just like the point of a business is not to make money. But when you have a car, you need to use gas to get to the destination, which is the point. When you have a business, you help solve people's problems, which gets you money. The point is solving people problems. The byproduct is the money that you get. The problem is so many people are focused on the money or social media. We're focused on becoming influencers and we have no influence. It's like a cheeseburger without cheese. Like, how does that make sense? You have to solve someone's problem. You have to help someone achieve something that they want to achieve. And when you do that, you elevate yourself.
When you make people's lives better because of your presence in them, you have done something that's truly meaningful. Their existence is permanently changed because of something that you brought to the table. It's a really important and powerful thing.
I love
Uh,
that.
what do you think? What is the most important thing that you think you've learned in the process of doing what you do?
Talk less and listen more. And from a speaker, that's pretty wild. Uh, as a speaker, I've learned that listening is my best skill. The stage talks are incredible, but it's the conversations off stage that I find help organizations and people the most. And people will just talk, and I give them the time of day. My body language is towards them. I'm fully invested in being present. I have so many things I could be focused on or thinking about, but I give people my time and my energy and my focus, and I'm interested in people. And I think it was Dale Carnegie who talked about that. If you want people to be interested in you, be interested in other people.
Sure. You know,
You know,
it ties back because that's something that I sometimes find myself struggling with. You know, the mind is always going a million miles per
it's
hour.
tough. It's tough. We have so much on our mind constantly, and trust me, I'll be walking through the house, and my girlfriend's like, "Are you good?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm just like, "Go, go, 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 go."
Yeah, no, because like you got to get it down before you forget
Yeah,
any of these,
yeah.
right? But one of the things that I talk about, and it's one of the standards when I talk about the guy in the box. I want to be able to say the guy in the box was generous with his time. I want somebody to be able to stand up there and say, you know what, this guy always had so much going on, but he always took the time to listen and help me if I had a problem. I mean, to me, that's part of a good and meaningful life. If somebody could say that about me, I would feel that would be part of a life that I could be proud to have lived, right? That would be a component. Which back to the decisions that you make at the end of the class, and now you're wrapping up and do I take and fully invest in that person that's coming up and talking to me and trying to solve what to them is the biggest problem in their universe? Absolutely. In order to be that guy, I have to take and give them my undivided, no rush. It has to be fully engaged, right? And so this is the actual, when I talk about standards, this is like that price you have to pay in order to have those standards. I have to be very efficient with the rest of my business to make sure that when I'm in front of that person,
Yeah.
I can be
You can
generous with them.
afford that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can afford the time cost to eventually be that guy that they're putting in the ground, right?
So people will say, "Oh, it's so hard to go out of my way to do that stuff." That's not out of your way. That's in the way. That is the way. That needs to be incorporated. And to have someone speak at your funeral and say, that person was so caring. That means you have to go from that person was caring to that person is caring.
Yeah, every day.
You can't be was in the future if you're not is right now, you know? And a lot of people think magically it's just going to happen sometime. That's not how it works.
Yeah. No, the thing is, figure out where you want to get to, and then figure out what you have to do today to be that guy at the end. That's the thing I love about the idea of standards is it takes all these crossroads we come to and turns them into one-way onlys because you can simply ask yourself the question of the opportunity, of the options available to me today, which one makes me closest to being that guy in the box? Which one gets me close? This is what I want the end to look like. Which choice that is facing me right now gets me closer to being that person? And all of a sudden, it's no longer a tough decision. You know which way you need to go. And so I think that, you know, being a good boss to yourself and laying out, letting yourself know what you talked about before, changing the goal, moving the goalpost, figuring out what the win even looks like. Like, what does winning this life look like? Again, how do you want the end to be? What does the win look like? All right, now that we know what the win is, what do we have to do to get there? What do we have to do today to be a little closer to that guy, that gal today? I want to ask you a very different kind of question, though, and I'll give you a second if you want to, if you have something you want to say about that.
Yeah, I just want to say, when it comes to people always talk about the wins or the priorities in their life. Like, that's my priority. That's my priority. Your priority is not what you say it is, it's what you do. And a lot of people are trying to build that guy in the box. Um, it's like you want to be a professional tennis player, so you go out and play baseball. Your actions aren't aligning with your goals. And a lot of people need that moment of awareness to be like, go back to basics. And that's something that really helped me was pretend like you don't know as much as you think you know and ask yourself these questions. Am I aligning my goals with my mission? What's my mission? What's my goals? What's my day look like? Oh, damn, this is drastically different. That honesty is tough. And I'd say it's the hardest part of making any sort of change. Change management is a tough concept, especially to sustain change. But the first and foremost thing you need to do is be honest with yourself in where you are versus where you want to be. It's tough.
All right, so let me. I'm going to ask you for a little bit of vulnerability, let's call it. Nothing crazy, but I want to ask you, what would you say, looking at the particular mountaintop you find yourself on today? What are you most proud of in business that you've accomplished?
Man, most proud of it. Like I'll be super honest, being proud of myself is a continuous struggle. And I think a lot of people share that sentiment. And I wish I could say I'm really good at it now, but it's still something I work on, you know? It takes a lot of being present to feel genuinely proud of myself, but I will say I've done some crazy stuff, some like super high end keynotes, 50,000 plus, like crazy stuff. Like it took me years to make 50,000, then got that in 45 minutes. It's like, that's crazy. Been on a TV show with a dude I used to play an action figure with, like, but none of that I really felt like super proud. The proudest moment is honestly my first speaking client. The first person who trusted me to help her build her speaking business and watching her get her first few gigs, like getting paid to speak, the look on her face, like I get chills thinking about it. It wasn't a lot of money, but to her, it was everything. Seeing that dream of her become a reality, I think that's what I'm most proud of.
I love that, man. I love that. And you know what's crazy is because the second piece of that question is what are you most proud of in life? And it sounds like those are offshoots of probably would be a very similar answer.
Yeah, man, I think what I'm most proud of in life was finally, in a personal setting, like stop hiding my disability and what that's done for kids with disabilities around the world. Like I walked in New York Fashion Week as a disabled model and like that was crazy, man, to see all these little boys and girls who are just they see you and they feel like they feel seen, you know, and they're like, "Damn, I can do that." And I never had that moment when I was a kid. I never had that like, "Oh, I could be like that person," because everyone I saw, I was like, "There's no people with disabilities in this space." And they saw me and they're just like, that's cool, you know. So like I guess I'm proud of myself for like stepping out of that comfort zone, you know.
Yeah, no, I imagine that would be tough for sure, man. What what one piece of advice would you give our people that are listening today, if you could?
Get to the root of the problem and be honest with yourself. Take a second, turn all the distractions off, like phone on airplane mode, be in a quiet room, and ask yourself, like, what are you struggling with and what's the real issue for you? Ask enough questions to go deep and get to the feeling, not the process. Don't say you need to lose weight because that's not a thing. Don't say you need to make more money because that's not a thing. You have to ask yourself, like, what's the true issue here and what are you running from? What are you hiding from? The moment you can learn to be unguarded and just raw and honest with yourself, that's the moment you can start fixing things. You can always hide, you can always make up for these things and you can always like cope, but there's that thing, that elephant in the room you haven't addressed. Address it. Because I promise you, coming from a person who did that for almost 20 years, uh, there is a whole new life on the other side of that.
You like the version of you better on the other side of that rainbow.
Man,
Absolutely.
so much better.
All right. Uh, what one book or movie would you recommend?
All right. So, I'm gonna be a douche and recommend two books because these two books were really epic for me in two different ways. The first book that really changed everything for me was Ryan Holiday's "The Obstacle Is the Way." Stoicism kind of introduced me to Stoic philosophy and then just philosophy in general. But that concept really helped me because it's literally what I do with my disability. The obstacle in the way became the way, and if anything, I turned my health issues into wealth issues, and I talk about that on a few of my keynotes. But that book really changed everything. And Brianna Weiss, 101 Essays That'll Change the Way You Think, former drug addict, and turned her life around through writing and thought leadership and the way she writes, the messaging. You can pick up any page, any book, and get value out of it. I resonate on a lot of things she went through in life, but also her idea, theory, and practice is a game changer.
Love it. Good stuff, man. Last question for you. Well, two more questions, I suppose. What's next for you, Chris? What's the next thing you got going?
Man, I'm super happy with where I'm at now. I just want to continue doing what I'm doing. I have a book that I signed with a publisher that's coming out in September. I'm excited for that. I'm coaching speakers now and developing a speaker course on the business side of it, so like how to make money for speakers. But I'll continue to speak until the day I die. I love speaking. It's what drives me, and I hope to help other speakers kind of build that as well. Maybe some movie stuff here in the works, doing some casting stuff with a company. Like a lots of stuff is moving around, but at the end of the day, man, every day I wake up and every day I go to sleep, I know I have built a life worth living, and I'm just gonna live the shit out of it.
Love it, bro. Love it. Love it, Chris. Last question I'm going to ask you is this: where can people find you if they want more?
I'm all over the place. So like I'm super active on LinkedIn right now with like copywriting and all kinds of stuff about speaking. So if you're interested in that, my LinkedIn is just at Chris Ruden. All my like main following is on Instagram and all other platforms, YouTube, at Chris Ruden, and my website is chrisruden.com. So pretty simple.
Awesome, Chris. Everybody, Chris Ruden. He's amazing. Thank you so much for being on, Chris, and for giving us some of your time and all of this wisdom that you've dropped on us.
I appreciate you for having me, man.
My pleasure. And to all of you folks listening, reminding you always to know your shit. Folks, there's no excuse. This is your life. You need to take responsibility for it and go out there and build something you can really be proud of. That being said, folks, till next time.